Why do governments outsource migration management, or the externalization of migration management? Has to do with a lot of the context where we see the discourse around responsibility. If European or Western nation actually want the responsibility of receiving irregular migrations at their borders, Fortress Europe has been a dominant aspect of how the EU has maintained its border for a long time. And the agreements that they have with countries such as Libya, for example, and in other Western nations, the US, for example, with the DRC most recently, has often raised questions around human rights, upholding of human rights values, right? So the principles of non-refoulement, for example, if we are saying that we uphold those human rights values, why are we sending irregular migrants back or returning them to countries that are not considered safe, right? The other implication is that Western nations don't want to share the burden of taking in irregular migrants, because that means not only financial responsibility but also political responsibility. And we've seen that across the world there is the uptake of far-right incentives that raises the question around, do we want to open our borders to people that don't necessarily share our values, and those values being people don't necessarily fit within that Eurocentric idea of what kind of migrants are welcome, right? A very different context, for example, is the discourse that happened around Ukrainian refugees that are mostly welcome in most European countries. But that same conversation doesn't happen when we're talking about refugees from, let's say, Syria, or refugees from Iran, etc. Those are conversations we're asking then, are we bringing terrorists into the country? So the narrative is responsibility sharing that the Western nations don't have, the idea that it brings political contention with their voters, and the financial implication that you then have to take care of the people who are entering the border, and making sure that the border remains a space of contention is also an important aspect of gaining votes for people.